Sorry about that. We had a few technical difficulties, and we are still waiting for our guests to get here. Um, yeah, we're back. We're live. Like I said, we're still waiting for our guests to get here, and they still have not gotten here yet. And again, I sent out I guess you could call it a promo earlier, where I was, letting you know that I was going to be live at 1 o'clock. And today's topic is going to be information and education about HIV/AIDS. People don't realize that there is indeed a difference between HIV and AIDS. HIV is the virus that causes AIDS. So because you have HIV does not mean that you have AIDS, but you have the virus that causes AIDS. Is what HIV is all about. That through technology and again the evolution of study and understanding of this disease, there are people who are actually living lives uh, with HIV that is undetectable. But that doesn't mean just because it's undetectable doesn't mean that you still don't have HIV. And does that still mean that you could possibly, it could possibly left untreated turn into AIDS? Of course, this is just general information that I have, but the people who are supposed to be here on the panel coming, they'll have a lot more information, and that's why I say if you're in the chat, if you have some questions, maybe you want to share a life experience about someone who's living with the HIV, or so that you lost somebody to AIDS, because again, as I reiterated earlier, there's a lot of famous people. When you start thinking about AIDS, the first thing a lot of people think about, they talk about Magic Johnson, who was diagnosed in 1991 that he had HIV. Of course, there was a whole lot of misnomers about it, stuff that we didn't know, a lot of speculation that we took to be fact, and when it turns out they weren't fake, because here we are in 2025, and Magic Johnson is still living his best life because of medicine and research that came from, I guess, him being the face of it, so to speak. I guess that's really the only way that you can look at it. And then to look at another athlete who passed in 85, I mean, not 85, but when Arthur Ashe passed, uh, which was, I think, around 86 or 87, when it was first coming out, we first really heard about the word AIDS. Uh, and of course, the speculation was that Arthur Ashe was gay, but as it turns out, because that was the misnomer that we had out, that it was just restricted to gay. I said, did it move from just gay to people who use needles? And both of those were ways that you could contract it, but that wasn't the only way that you could contract it, because Magic was heterosexual, and we just taking people at their word. But we don't know if he engaged in any other kind of activity or not. But we do know that he did have HIV, and he continues to have so, and he, became the face of what it is that what we know is today. And like I said, on the other end of the spectrum, we had Arthur Ashe, who was a very famous tennis player, one of the best in the world at the time, and he contracted it through a blood transfusion. But where we are now, we've come a very long way with the education and awareness of it. But I still do believe that we do have a long way to go till we get to where we need to be about eradicating this from the planet Earth, period. But of course, it always takes you, it takes me, it takes a collective. Not just a certain group of people got to stop doing that, or a certain group of people got to stop doing that. It's going to take the collective to eradicate it. And it's something that can be done. I think if we tried, put forth the effort to it. But again, talking about it, the conversation that we have, and again, organizations like AHF, Rural Women in Action, and of course, the health department throughout the world, in your county, I think, seminars and stuff should be had about this, because again, there's so many questions like, people will say, well, I got tested 5 years ago, but you never know, because you don't know how it can be contracted. I mean, it was so scary. People used to think to the point that, well, you can get it from sitting on a toilet seat. It was just that crazy. But that is what this podcast today is about. And again, I'm just a facilitator. I got a platform here, and some more people who are far more versed in it than I am, are on the way, and I don't know where they are. hadn't got here yet. Miss Tammy Kinney and one of the other members of Rural Women in Action going to provide some insight and everything about this. This is them calling in right now. Tammy, what's going on?
Ask your son to come to the near door and get this.
We're live right now, and he's holding the camera.
Oh, we got it. We got it.
Okay. And that's the guest, so I think they'll be here in a few minutes, and we can really get this podcast going to the way it's supposed to be going. Again, thank you guys. Thank you guys. I need water or something. But anyway, again, still nothing in the chat, Dante?
Nope, we got 7 people.
You got how many people?
7.
How many?
7.
7 people, but no questions?
No questions yet.
Can you read the names off to me?
Let me see if I can.
Anybody?
Let's see.
Well, I guess I can ask you a question while we're sitting here waiting on them to call. When it comes to HIV and AIDS, what's been your experience with it? You're a 30-year-old male, heterosexual. What's been your experience with it?
To be honest, I never had an experience.
No friends, no nothing.
No.
Is it a topic of conversation that comes up from time to time?
Nowadays, no. Surprisingly, no, it doesn't.
Huh?
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that comes up a lot.
It doesn't come up a lot?
No, it does not. Unless it just somebody has a scare or something like that.
Now, what would you call a scare?
Sexual transmitted infections, STIs.
So what you're saying is somebody contacts an STD, HIV is one of the things that they think about, not just a regular, just not chlamydia or gonorrhea. It's something else.
Yeah.
So HIV would shoot right to the top.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so it basically. So let me ask you something. Do you know your status?
Yes.
You do. How often do you get tested?
You know what? I know what. Never mind. I know I'm clean as a whistle. Clean as a whistle.
Say what now?
I know I'm clean as a whistle. I never had a problem, so I think I'm all right.
But it was 10 years ago when you got tested?
Yeah, it was like a long time ago.
What prompted you to get tested?
I just wanted to be sure.
Peace of mind?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. Do you hear our guests coming?
I hear feet shuffling.
You hear feet shuffling? Make them be here in a minute. Yep, they are here. Come on around. They've been waiting. Hey, lady. Our guests are getting situated. Okay. We're waiting on our guest here. Bear with us. Anybody else in the chat?
I see 2 people. Ain't nobody saying nothing yet. Oh, there's 4.
Nobody name you recognize?
No, I was trying to figure out how I can see names.
Bear with us, folks. They're coming. Yep. Yeah. All right. Are we ready?
We're ready.
All righty. She on camera? Dante?
Yes.
She is? Okay.
Hello.
I'm gonna let you go ahead and all right. I'm gonna go ahead and let you introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there. This is your boy Sam Hutchins from the It's a Wrap with Reggie and Sam podcast. Your gracious and humble host, and we are here to
abuse. But this time we're talking about mental health in the Black community, which is a part of Angel of God outreach. In the Black community, we don't want to talk about mental health. It's still a stigma. So we're going to go across even teen suicide rates and mental health. So February is Black History Month, and we want to talk about the impact that our Black youth are being impacted of the laws concerning mental health.
Okay. And how long has your ministry been in operation?
About 20 years.
And where are you located?
I'm at 854 Westbrook Street, apartment 113, and that's Griffin, Georgia, 30224.
Okay. What prompted you to start this? Was it because a lot of times people do stuff out of a life experience that they don't want to happen to somebody else that propels them into starting, like some women, domestic violence. They'll start something, I'm just going to teach these young girls the signs that they should look for and what they shouldn't be doing, and that'll propel them into starting a shelter for women.
Right.
What was it? Was it a life experience that propelled you to do this? Or was it just a passion that you had because you care about people?
God planted on my heart to start a program for hurting women. I did not see it in my household, but there were women around me, like kin people. I'll give you an example. Thanksgiving was a big thing for us. Holidays were a big thing for my family. So when we would be at our aunt's house for Thanksgiving, we would have one of our cousin-in-laws come in black and blue, patches on her face. And I hear everybody saying, elephant in the room, elephant in the room. So as a little girl, I was like, well, where's the elephant? But then I learned that they were talking about this particular cousin, and I just saw it in other households, so that it laid on my heart to reach out to hurting women. I did not have the peace that I was actually experiencing domestic violence because it was emotional and mental, and that's the part that they leave out.
Yeah.
So I started studying my craft, and as I started studying it, I said, oh my, that pertains to me.
Wow. Yeah. And the reason I asked that is because I have an organization called the Hope for Xavier Foundation, which was about autism, because my son was diagnosed with autism in 1994. And that propelled me to start the organization because at the time it was such a stigma. When you heard that word that you really didn't understand it. So you started to make up your own theories about what, why, and all this other stuff. So in my regard, it was personal. Which that's why I would ask that question, because a lot of times, and I tell people I'm not an expert on autism. I can just tell you what I know from the experience gained from raising an autistic child, and I share that information because when he was diagnosed in '94, we didn't have a whole lot to work with. I was scared not scared to death, but I didn't know. I was so uncertain, but I couldn't let that uncertainty hold me back from doing what I had to do to make what we had to do. It's not me. I didn't do it by myself. His siblings, his mom, and of course we had a community here that embraced us, in trying to get out the awareness. And so that was why I asked the question, and because a lot of the causes are tied together. Why they were started, and it's a different perspective when it's as personal. But to get back to what you were saying about, I've never heard it called the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Because that,
because as a little girl, I'm like, I don't see any elephant.
Because you took it in the literal. You take it in the literal.
As a little girl, I was taking it literal.
Yeah.
But as I grew older, I said, okay, they're talking about cousin da da da, and it was very painful once I was of age to realize what was going on.
Yeah.
Because he would take her in the bathroom when you were here, did not tell you not, and didn't nobody address it. People continued to eat their collard greens, macaroni and cheese.
Why do you think
like
that was?
Nothing was going on?
Why do you think that was?
Generationally, if that's even a word.
It is. It is.
Generationally, domestic violence has been something that's just brushed under the rug. My mother was the only one that I knew that addressed my cousin who was beating her.
Yeah.
And so, and even the verbal abuse, my mother was the only one I've ever known to even address my cousin who was abusing his wife.
Wow.
So unfortunately, domestic violence is just one of those things that are unfortunately accepted and just brushed under the rug.
Wow. Cheers to your mom for doing that. Now, when you talk about the mental health side of it, when it comes to tolerance, and I'm just asking a question because I really don't have the answer. When it comes to tolerance, do you think that plays a role in why people put up with it so long?
Most definitely. Most definitely. It's sad that it's accepted, especially in the Bible Belt. Let's get very real with it. Mm-hmm. When I have my programs, if I'm having it at Decatur Library, I will do outreach in that area, inviting the different people to the event. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a lot of people are like, well, I haven't experienced it because I haven't had this, a fist. And so they're like, no, that doesn't pertain to me. But so many you have emotional abuse, mental abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. So unfortunately, you remember back in the day when our parents would say, whatever happens in this house stays in this house. And,
yeah.
And unfortunately, that would close doors to people recognizing what's going on under their own roof and what's happening in their community.
One thing about that, because you don't know how people are built up, and I make this comment, statement all the time, that we are the sum total of our life's mm-hmm. experience, how we deal with stuff. And if you're not built to just keep it to yourself because you don't know how to keep it to yourself, mm-hmm. because you're not mentally strong enough to keep it to yourself, mm-hmm. then that can turn you into, set you up to be, susceptible to a lot of stuff that you probably wouldn't have if you were able to talk about it. Because talking about it, say back in the 70s, there was no, if something happened to you, there was no grief counseling.
No, it wasn't.
There was no, you need to go talk to a psychiatrist. It was like you say, it was shut up and deal with it.
For our community.
Well, that's what I mean. I was
yeah,
speaking
our
for
community. Yeah. But other cultures have been gaining mental health for their people that we didn't. It's still a stigma in the Black community when it comes to mental health.
Yeah.
I know that I had a nervous breakdown about 24 years ago.
Really?
And I was in my bed for 2 years. And unfortunately, a neighbor was working in the local grocery store, and she said, Tisa, where have you been? I said, well, I had to go to a mental health care facility because I had what they call a nervous breakdown. She said, oh girl, Black people don't do that. Read a book, read a magazine. I said, it's not that simple. Because if that was simple, I have plenty of books. I was a senior librarian assistant with DeKalb County Library for 14 years. So I had access to all the books and magazines I needed. If it that quick of a fix, I would have done it. But my choice of drugs was my bed. I was in my bed for 2 years, and that was my protective. I know that I wouldn't hurt nobody, and couldn't nobody hurt me.
That was your safe place.
That was my safe place. My bed was my safe place.
Okay. Wow. Now, part of this conversation, when I had talked to Tammy earlier, was that she was wanting to, of course, this is HIV/AIDS awareness. Mm-hmm. And I've had he was off camera, but he was on camera, but off camera. We were talking about knowing your status, and how does that I guess what I'm trying to do is tie this into the mental health side of it. And I'm having a hard time doing that. So if you want to help me out, you can.
Well, unfortunately, in the church, let's just break it down.
Yeah, let's do that.
Even in the church, Because when I do the evangelizing for people to come to my programs, we go to different churches and ask the women of the congregation. We welcome them and invite them to our program. And a lot of the women, first ladies that I would ask, could I come to the church? They end up telling me, no, you can't, because their husband don't want you to bring it here. So even in the body of Christ, there's a lot of known abuse, but you don't talk about it. The side of HIV, AIDS, my brother, who was 33 years old, Cedric Bacon, died 33 years of age of complications due to AIDS.
Was it pneumonia? Was it pneumonia? Because
No.
what I understood, pneumonia is like the final stage, like because your body can't.
He stopped taking his medication, and that's one thing we need to talk about mental health.
Absolutely, that's what I was about to say. Now we're tying the bow.
He stopped taking his medication. His doctor's like, Tisa, Cedric should not be anywhere near dying if he was taking his medication. There's so much shame that comes with the diagnosis. There's so much shame that comes with being in a DV, domestic violence situation.
Denial is
a big part of it. Yeah. I myself went through, when I told you I had the nervous breakdown for 2 years, there's so much shame that goes with it. Nobody around me knew. My family, my neighbors did not know what I was going through, because I look like this. This is just what I do when I would go out. But when I would go out, my only thought was, when can I get back to my bed? Because again, that was my safety zone. But again, there's so much shame attached to mental illness, to HIV/AIDS awareness. There's so much shame that a lot of times people don't even get the care they need because of that shame. My brother worked for Grady Hospital, where he could get all his medications for free.
And he still didn't want to take it?
No, because he did not want that
now, what year was this?
Attached. It was 1994.
94. And see, and that's interesting because before you came on, I was on camera. I was talking about, because two events that happened around 91. Well, I think the first time I heard about it was in 1986, and you really didn't get a full grasp of what it was because it was Arthur Ashe. You remember Arthur Ashe, the tennis player, and he had contracted it from blood transfusion.
Right.
But then there was whispers, because when it first came out, they said it was a gay disease that only gay people had. That was the stigma that was probably the biggest one that is still hanging around this day. That is a gay disease. But Arthur Ashe got it. But then Magic Johnson gets it in 1991. And I remember reading, because I started reading because I'm a huge Laker fan. But what I've been reading Magic's memoir after he wrote a book after every dust was settled, so to speak. And he said one of the things that he remembers is that when he had to do the press conference, getting back to the shame part that you were talking about, is that they told him, do not say the word AIDS. Make sure you say HIV. Because the word AIDS was still shocking to the world. It was such a shock to the world. And even my brother, I think he called me and told me, he said, because he heard about it before I did, he called me, he said, hey, here, because we're both Laker fans. I was like, he was. He said, man, he said, Magic gay. I said, what do you mean Magic gay? So he got AIDS. I'm like, what? That was what he said. But like I said, fast forward now, and it had the disease done what it was supposed to be. He was supposed to have been dead in 2001 because they said 10 years was the life expectancy. Here we are, 2025, and he's living undetected, still with HIV. But so we've made the leaps and bounds that your ministry as well, the testing, the awareness, and all that.
It is because of my brother Cedric. I came part of Rural Women in Action because I wanted to do something to advocate our people going through, and unfortunately, the church uses that to show hate towards people who are homosexual. God wasn't a God of hate.
No.
God wasn't a God of hate. So I hate that. I wonder sometimes, because back then my family was very open about their religious beliefs and what my brother was doing and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think we need to operate in love. And I just sometimes wonder how would my brother feel in this age being in 2025, the hatred that Christians show to homosexuals. I don't understand it. It's almost like it's an excuse for me to wave what you're doing is wrong flag. And what I learned from my mom and dad, God is a God of love. Not taken away from anybody's religious preference when it comes to talking about homosexuality. But God is a God of love. And so I hate that Christians wave that flag. This is God said you can't do this, but God also said that being a liar, he could not, what's the word? God hated a liar. So if you want to talk about one thing, let's talk about all of it.
Well, for my upbringing, there are no degrees in sin. There are no sins that are worse than the others. And I think where it comes off as hated, it may not, and I don't think they mean for it to come off as hate, but it has all the essence of hate, because you say that because you got somebody in your church that tells a whole bunch of lies, but they don't come against the same visceral as somebody who's gay.
Pastor sleeping with the women in the church, they just sweep that under the rug. I said, we got bigger issues than this. Yeah. So why are we stuck on this? And
me, myself, and again, I tell people I'm not any much from somebody who really cared about them and understand that they were concerned about their soul, that they started to look at it in a different light. And I'm assuming that's what they say. I can only go by what they say. I don't know now, but they said that they turned away from that lifestyle because they realized about their soul, and that the people were trying to be more concerned about the soul. And it's like I say sometimes, I think the fundamental thing that the church has forgotten is that it's the sinner that has the soul, not the sin. But we knock so hard on that sin, and we ostracize them so much on that sin, and we put so many limitations. God is all inclusive. He wants that homosexual to come to him just as much as he wants that liar to come to him. He wants that
and the
adulterer to come to him just like he wants.
We got plenty of whores.
For lack of a better word, your word is not mine.
This is not Sam talking. He's talking.
But yeah,
there are plenty of preachers just having sex with the whole gamut of women in the church, and they just sweep it under the rug. Yeah. So come on, let's talk about all the sins, and we're going to talk about what we feel is one.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother podcast. But
it is.
But as I say,
we're going to talk about it. This is Real Talk with Sam Batista. Real Talk.
Yeah, but in getting back with the HIV and the testing, like I said, it's a great work that Tammy at AHF is doing here, because I'm on her board at Rule 1 Remedy in Action, and I help her out with AHF. I even went through to get certified on how to test for HIV, which is something she's going to start doing here pretty soon. She's got to get all the ducks in a row, because there are requirements that, of course, you have to go through privacy issues and all that kind of stuff. But you want to have all that stuff in place. That's not something you wing it as you go. And I applaud her for taking the time to make sure that it's right to do that. And I was asked somebody off camera. I was like, did you know your status, and how important is it that you know your status? And the answer to that was kind of vague, but said that they got tested 10 years ago and they think that they're good, but you never know. Me myself, I do it every year, because I don't want to surprise, because you may have contracted it the next day. You see what I'm saying? The day before you tested, you weren't, but then the next day it may show up, and now you'll wait 4 or 5 years and it's manifested itself into something else. But getting back to what you were talking about the mental health issues and the domestic violence. So what is it that what stigma is it that you try to get rid of when you talk about the domestic violence? Do you provide a place where it's okay for them to speak about it, or because a lot of people, and we did something on domestic violence, and I had a really good friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine. She died from matter of fact, here in Hawaii, I won't call her name, from domestic violence, which prompted me to look at it in a different light too, because once it becomes personal for you, and like I said, it was years before it even went to trial, but it was a situation had seen the light, was going to get out of it, but it didn't happen. I guess the question that I'm trying to ask is there a safe, does your ministry point people towards a safe place, or just try to create an environment where it's okay for them to, if you're ready to take that step, because that's what some organizations that I've talked to, if you're ready to take this step, come here. We're not going to come.
Because people are so judgmental about women and how their compassion towards women who are going through bouts of domestic violence. And so you'll tell a woman, leave, but can I come to your place? And they're like, well, no, you can't come here, but you need to leave.
That's what
if you can't offer a young lady a safe place, don't drill her about leaving. Yeah, you may not have experienced it, but that's my story. So unfortunately, we don't have enough safe houses. My dream and goal is to have it at Winners House. When women do go to the safe houses, if it's even available beds, the program is like 3 months. Gwinnett County has a program that's much longer. I think it's maybe 12 months. It takes a long time for a woman to even get herself together. So if you're just housing her for 3 months and putting her back out there,
you're really
kind of putting her back in the situation that she was in. Because a woman will say, I know this crazy. I know, do I want to snatch my children out of this situation? Because even I know back in the day, I will say 15 years ago, there were even houses that if you had a teenage son with you, he would be separated from you, because of his age. So you're going into a lot of the safe houses are very cold. It's very strict. The women have to be out the house at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I want at Winners House, which is my mother's, named after my mom, but at Winners House to have like a 13-month program, because you have to first address the mind.
How long do you okay? And I like what you're saying, because it kind of segues into my next question. How long did you, if you had if your ideal program, how long would it take for a woman to transform from domestic violence and the residuals that came from it to I am woman, hear me roar, I'm independent now? How long do you think that would normally take, or is it really hard to put an amount on it, time on it, because everybody's different? What they went through is different. How it affected them is different, because they're different that it happened to.
Okay, so I would want my program to be at least 13 months. It takes at least 3 months to even deal with the mental aspect of domestic abuse.
Almost like detoxing it.
Yes. So I would give my women at least 3 months of detox. That's with having life coaches on hand. That's with having medical on hand. That's with having social people on hand to help them reprogram this. I could take a lady from Georgia to California, California to Canada, Canada to New York, and back to Georgia. But if you don't change this mindset, they'll end up right back in that same situation. So I would say, I would take at least, I want my program at Winter House to be at least 13 months. For a woman to really find herself, for her, whatever goals she may have, to be whatever trade or going back to school. I want to provide scholarships for them, put them back on their feet, give them a living situation that's conducive to healing. And so, and then in 13 months, let them graduate into another program to sustain what they just learned in 13 years. What people don't understand with domestic violence, people say you always see signs, but no, you don't. You don't always see red flags. With domestic violence, everything is so wonderful in the beginning. So you don't see any of the manipulation. You don't see any of that.
Yeah.
So one day you wake up and like, oh my God, how did I get here?
Yeah. That's a reoccurring theme that a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, because the women that I've talked to that have gone through domestic violence, that's a reoccurring theme. What you just said, everything was great. Then all of a sudden one day he backhanded her. For saying something that he didn't like, or one day she realized that he had on something that wasn't her favorite color. And he just punched her. Okay, but after that, he got right back to everything was hunky dory, and she did another thing. Then all of a sudden, it started getting more and more. But the question I wanted to ask you was, because I know you concentrate on the women, but what if a woman comes and she's got children? And because I know it's a different dynamic if the child is, say, toddler, 2 to 8, as opposed to, like you said, she may come there with a teenager, 14 to 16 years old. And if it's a girl, it's even, I would imagine it would become even more complex, because now a girl actually sees her mom and what she's going through. And but would there be counseling for them as well?
Yes, there would be counseling for the children as well. People forget about the kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Children hear, even if you send them to their room, they hear the arguing. They hear the punching, they hear the hitting, and a lot of times you're dealing with narcissists. So a narcissist know how to abuse the mom, but then show the kids love. So it gives the kids a distorted view of normality. And that's how it's able to be emotional and verbal abuse. Yeah. Being that it becomes their norm, they'll promise themselves that they'll never do that to their lady. But unfortunately, we live what we lived. So unfortunately, a lot of the males end up doing exactly what they witnessed with their mother. And so that's how it keeps.
And he turned into that person when he drank. So it taught me not to drink. And I can't say I can almost say with 100% for sure, I'm the oldest. And I got 3 siblings, and I would venture to say that none of them have abused their wives, because I don't know if they were old enough to remember it, because I barely was old enough to remember it. But again, what you said, it depends, and it gets back to my point. It really depends on how that person individually deals with what they saw. Not to turn it too political, because say January 6th at the Capitol, some people saw that as a peaceful protest, and some people saw it, but we all saw the same thing. You see what I'm saying? But it affected us different. And that's my getting out of my political part of it. But what I'm saying is my dad, by seeing how not to treat a woman, he taught me how to treat a woman. But again, I think it came from how you're raised and what you do with your life's experience. But when it comes to domestic violence, it was such a stigma in the 70s. I literally, you would hear women say that's how you know a man loves you, if he hits you upside your head. If he doesn't hit you upside, to me, I always thought that was crazy, because there used to be I don't know how old you are, but I'm finna show my age. There used to be this cartoon called Ignat. Ignat would hit this lady in the head with a brick, and when he did, Ignat, she would say, "Oh, Ignat," because that means she knew he loved it. And the subliminal message that sent, that I don't think they realized at that time. Or maybe they did. I don't know. I don't know how the government works back then. But he would hit her upside the head with a brick, and then she would hearts would come out of her head, showing that she loved. Oh, Ignat. But a lot of people saw that, and it became the norm, man. They think, well, it's okay to hit a woman.
From the abuser validating it. It comes from the people being abused validating it.
And what is that called? There's got to be a term for that. What is
I don't know the term, but we've got to get rid of that, to accept it, to make abuse. Love doesn't hurt, Sam. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
You will go through things together. Don't get me wrong. I was married almost 30 years before being divorced.
Yeah.
Love doesn't hurt. Love does not hurt. You will go through things, but this doesn't hurt. This hurts. Verbal abuse hurts. Emotional abuse hurts. Sexual abuse hurts. Financial abuse hurts. So women have to realize that there's it's a big umbrella when you say domestic violence?
Because men are in that too. And again, we get back to the shame part. A lot of men are getting their butts beat too because they're not fitting to hit a woman, and a woman knows that, and she just abusing them, beating them, hitting them, cussing them out, calling them out, demeaning them, degrading them, and doing all of this stuff. It gets back to, it's probably more mental abuse than it is physical abuse, because a man's stronger than a woman. So if she punches him, knowing that he's not going to punch her back, but if he punches her that one time, she probably punch him again. But anyway, that was what I was saying, because the men are under that umbrella too, because I don't want people to think that it's just,
Men
it
are
only
under
happens
that
to
umbrella
women.
too. Part of Angel of God Outreach, we also was speaking with men who were victims of domestic violence.
Yeah.
I asked one young man, what prompted you to abuse your wife?
Yeah.
And he shared with me that he lost his virginity to his mom. And so that goes back to mental illness. A lot of, people think that men are the only ones that abuse, but what you're dealing with is a spirit. You're not dealing with gender. You're dealing with a spirit. And if that spirit is molesting the girls, they're also molesting the boys.
Well, that's why I think, when you think about, not to go back, we finna circle the wagons here now about the homosexuality. I think that is a spirit as well. I think homosexuality is a spirit, and if we, talk to people that have said, I felt this way since I was 8 years old, but they didn't say anything to anybody about it. You see what I'm saying?
Well,
but at 8, how do you talk to somebody? Because you don't understand it yourself. But again, that's another podcast in another room at another time.
Right.
Still, but I'm just saying, spirituality, how important that is to
Yes,
recognize that.
When they're telling a young lady to leave, or a young man to leave an abusive situation, people say, "Oh, I would never take a guy who would do this to me, hit me." But what they have to realize, when a woman gets into the physical part of it, he's already programmed the mental part of it, and the hitting is just like the little cherry on top. That's just a small.
Well, I mean,
part of it. The physical part is such a small part of it, and they start with the mental first.
And that's and it's funny. Well, not funny. It's interesting that you say that, because that's the tactic of a pimp. He'll tell anybody. And for one of the most famous lines in a Black Exploitation movie, Carlin, one he said, anybody can control a woman's body, but if you can control her mind,
that's it.
He said, if you can control her mind.
So they start there first.
So, and that's what I'm saying.
Like pimps, they start there for taking care of them, rescuing them.
Well, that's the sale. That's the sale.
That's
the sale that they give them. Hey, you can drive this kind of car. If you work hard, you can do what I tell you to do. You can do this, you can do this. And next thing you know, you out there on the track, so to speak.
But I really feel that people are just seeking love,
acceptance,
and being with Mama Diane, Tammy's mom, has been a blessing to me. We were talking about, I was on this show, What Would You Do? And the situation was, if you saw a young man and his wife celebrating their anniversary, and she goes to the bathroom, and then his lover comes in and kisses him, what would you do? Would you tell the wife? Of course, I was the one that ended up
So you would have told
telling the wife.
You would have told.
I ended up telling the wife because I saw the impact that being on the down low caused my brother and my sister-in-law. My brother was, I guess you would say, on the down low. He was married to my sister-in-law, wonderful young lady, wonderful, who took care of my brother to the bitter end. And I asked her, how were you able to be there for my brother? And he chose a different lifestyle from your union. And she said he was the love of my life.
She went in those instances.
He was the love of my life.
Yeah,
and
she loved who he was, and separated that from what he did.
Yes.
Because that's a lot of when you deal with somebody who has a drug abuse problem, and you stay with them, and you won't leave them. And the first thing people want to know, well, I don't know why you, but you learn the essence of that person, and every once in a while they'll show you enough of that you can hold on, and that's how you wind up when you've been with somebody who's been on drugs for 30 years. But again, you love who they were, not what they did, because you understood that what they did is not who they are. And when you find out who they are, that's who you love.
And when we have can't, don't put your mouth on it. If you can't do anything to help, because a lot of times we'll tell a girl to leave, and we put them in a worse situation than they were. A lot of women lose their lives to domestic violence. It's much easier said than done. Just leave, because again, the woman gets used to that crazy. You know, usually it's very symptomatic. Like I had a young lady who knew that come the weekend, that's when the abuse would happen. Yeah. On Friday through Sunday. But Monday through Thursday, they were in family bliss. Everything looked the norm. But he was an alcoholic, so on Friday, that's when he would drink. That's when he would abuse her and even abuse the kids. But do I leave this norm that snatch my kids out of their home, out of their norm, out of their, what they may feel, safe space, to a cold environment of a safe house that's going to put them back on the street in 3 months, and a lot of them end up right back where they started, because they know this. You know this crazy. You know the symptomatic schedule of this crazy. So a lot of women, again, if you don't have a safe place to put her, keep your mouth off of it.
Wow. I interviewed a young lady a couple of years ago. Of course, I think October is Domestic Violence Month.
It is. It is.
And I was doing a series of interviews with people who had been through it, and of course they were a person's life experience. I tell sometimes what you go through, you're not going through it just for yourself. You're going through it for somebody else, because somebody's going to watch how you go through it. And one thing that I got out of that podcast, she told me, she said one of the most disrespectful things you can say to a person who's in a domestic violence situation is, "Why didn't you just leave?" They said that. She said that is so disrespectful. Because people, and could you speak onto that, what she meant by that? I understood it, but for my listening audience, I got almost 10,000 subscribers. So to explain to somebody who may not know what that means, and I think you would be a better job at it than I could. But then it was a moment for me. I mean, it was. I was like, whoa! I never even thought about something, because I was on that same train line. Why don't you just leave? Just pick your time and sneak away. But when she said that, and then she explained, could you speak to that?
Well, domestic violence is a cycle. It's a cycle. The abuse will happen, and what you got to realize, a part of domestic violence, especially if you're dealing with a narcissist, they separate you from your norm, your family, basically, and your friends. So they kind of separate you from them until they become your source. Because the same person who beat you down is the same person that's there to bring you up. And they call that the honeymoon phase. So when your heart is in love with this abuser, all you're hoping for what was. Because it didn't start out like this. So I'm praying that things are going to get better. Now he's here. He's my knight in shining armor. Things are getting better. And then the cycle continues. Because they come to you after the abuse like, I got you. I love you.
I'll never do that again.
I'll never do that again. Trust me, you made me do this. So a lot of guilt and shame, has the woman thinking, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not whatever. So they end up blaming and internalizing it themselves. All of this is manipulated by the abuser. So in your heart, you don't have anybody but them. Because everybody who was there for you, your family gets tired of being on that roller coaster. So I don't even hold, even with me, I don't even hold my family who had to walk away from the Tisa, I'll say Butch situation, because at time they're there to help me, I just slid right back into the same thing.
Yeah, I had a cousin, and again, I'm not calling names. He had a sister, and his sister would always get into a fight with this guy. And he said like twice he went and took up for his sister, but he said but she wound up right back with him. And he said it wasn't that he didn't love his sister. It's just that he knows how this thing is going to play out. But for me, that's kind of dangerous because one of these times when you don't go, he may wind up killing them.
Well, another thing is we have the No More Shame campaign where we make mirrors for women who have been victims of domestic violence, and we put affirmations in there for them to build themselves up from the inside out.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand, again, that person didn't start, there was no red flags. The person did not start out like that.
Yeah.
So this person, you done went to your girlfriends and your people and said, oh, honey, I done met this great dude and he's this and he's that and he is the best charmer, he's the best guy. When you start getting this, you're too ashamed and embarrassed to go to your people and say, this guy I told you was the man, he's beating me. This guy I told you was my knight in shining armor, he is, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse. So women just have to stop identifying this, not being hit, because I was never this.
Yeah.
But it's so much that goes with it. So somebody, like you said in the beginning, someone just saying leave, it's so much more to it than that.
Yeah, and
a lot of women lose their lives when they just leave. Most women, it takes 7 times to get them out of an abusive situation. 7 times for them saying, okay, I'm finished. Okay, I'm finished. Okay, I'm done.
Why 7?
That's what statistics show. I don't know what that's based on, but they say 7 women would try to leave 7 times before she just out of it. I can't even promise you, Sam, that I wouldn't be in the same situation if he had not divorced me.
Really?
Yes. I can't say if I would still be there. My ex took care of everything. I didn't know a lot about paying bills. I was 50 years old upon the divorce. So here I am, a 50-year-old woman who's never had obligations of paying bills, obligations of taking care to being married. And so I was never in a situation where, I didn't know the value of money because I never needed money. Everything was always provided for me. The high-end cars, high-end jewelry, home, all of that. And so, unfortunately, I didn't see the signs of domestic abuse again until I started Angel of God Outreach and started studying my craft. And then when I started studying past the physical abuse, I started reading about mental abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse. So I was like, oh my God, that's me. And so when I had the nervous breakdown, I was in my bed for 2 years. My mother-in-law asked me, Tisa, how did you measure your time? I said, I went into the depression in spring. I was in my bed from spring, summer, fall, winter to another spring, summer, fall, winter. And that's how I was able to time how long I was in my bed. So again, there are so many things that go with rescuing a woman from a domestic violence situation. Yeah. And again, if you don't have a safe place to put a woman that, because there's already enough shame and embarrassment that she's going through. You don't have to put a woman down who is in it because that's the life that you live. You could walk away from it, but every woman can't just up and walk away from it. It's so many factors that impede all of that.
Wow. This is an amazing story.
It is.
Your story. I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about the topic. The topic is great, and it's one that I feel really great about. But what I'm saying is that your story, in itself, is very inspirational, and I would love to sit down with you for you to tell your story because one, again, as I reiterated earlier, sometimes we go through stuff, it's not just for us. And I think you realize that, which is what propelled you to start your ministry. So somebody else can understand that there is hope. So somebody can understand that there is a better life for me. I can because somebody else did. And I would love to sit down and just hear your story.
I would love to share it. I would love to share it. God said that
because being personal, And like I said, the strength and transparency is unbelievable. What it does for people, because people see enough of, well, that won't happen to me, or I wouldn't have did that, or I'm living my life, so this could possibly happen to me. But we did a podcast a couple of years ago, and shout out to Debria Brown, Wisdom Nuggets. She brought up something. She said you could be similar to what you were saying. You could be living in the biggest house in the world, have the finest cars but people on the outside think you got it going on, but they don't know that you're getting drugged across the floor by the hair of your head. But that's real. That is absolutely real. And your story, I would love it. Definitely going to give you a call so we can get back and do this. And we don't have to wait till October. I mean, we can start it before then, and move toward October. I would love to just come on for because normally the podcast is like 3 hours when I have a guest, because I just because it's about the guest, as opposed to today Tammy gave me a topic, and of course we went. It wasn't quite the topic. I haven't been through any domestic violence or anything like that. I'm inspired by your story. And by you, and I thank you so much for being a part, being a guest.
Thank you for having me and allowing me to do this. And we also want to let people know that my grandson, who is autistic, will be giving a scholarship in the name of your son, and we're going to be doing it on Sunday. Okay. And what we're going to do, I want to adopt a cause, and so we want people to adopt the cause of autism and match what Ezekiel, my grandson Ezekiel Cedric Charles Williams, will be giving to your son on Sunday. In the name of your son, God bless his soul. And I'm so sorry for your loss. And so, but we've got to make a difference and let his legacy live on, and the legacy that you have created in the autism community. We want it to go forth and get more education in the school system, the public school system, for kids who have autism, for it to be one-on-one special needs support in our public school. And that's something my daughter Benicia has been fighting for. My grandson is for someone to be in there with him because of the spectrum of the autism, for someone to be with him all day as opposed just for a couple of hours, a specialist in the room for a couple of hours. So we want people to adopt. I want them to adopt Ezekiel Cedric Charles Williams, adopt the cause, and give into it so the proceeds can go to better educating our kids who are in public settings with autism.
Absolutely. And again, say right here live in front of all my people, thank you guys so much.
Yes, we're so excited about it.
Yeah, this was, like I said, this has been my first one since my first podcast since October, and I kind of fell off the horse, so to speak. And again, hearing your story, like I said, it maybe not about, but it was the way that you went about it and the passion in which you tell it. That's the way I am about the Hope for Xavier Foundation, inspired by my son Xavier, and that's the part of the thing that's been helping with my healing. Again, earlier I told people I thank them for their prayers, encouraging words, because people have been inboxing me, calling and checking on me every once in a while. Because, like I said, this happened back in November, and a lot of times, after the funeral, everything just goes away. And I just met her a couple of years ago. But anyway, she told me, she said to be patient with your grief. Wow. And then the other one came from out of nowhere. And again, I'm not going to say the name, but it was so simple, but it was so powerful when she said it. Get back to being Xavier's dad. What we're going, and so again, I thank you so much
for
so
considering us.
As am I, and we and the people at the Hope for Xavier Foundation, we are so grateful and so thankful for this. And I got to give a shout out to Gina and Sam Mitchell. They've invited me out to Indiana to speak about Xavier at a gala that they're having in Indiana.
I want to join you.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing everything. I mean, they're flying us out. paying for the hotel. They just wanted to come and share because they never actually met Xavier, but they met him through the podcast because her son, Sam, that's his name, he has a podcast called Autism Rocks and Rolls. And he's doing some wonderful things in Indiana, and they reached out to me. So it's the healing is started. You know, the helping has started. And again, thank you so much for being here. And we're going to do that. We're going to do this a couple of more times because, again, your story, not just for domestic violence, but as a human condition, how it helps a human condition.
Yeah,
And I
there's
just
so
wanna
much
say-
shame that goes, even with, I applaud my daughter. She is so awesome.
Yeah.
She's such a wonderful mother. Both my girls, they're wonderful mothers. I love to see how they take care of their children and how the mothers that they are. My daughter, Benicia, is so hands-on with my grandson. I thank God for the heart that she has. But there's a lot of shame, unfortunately, when a person has a child with special needs. A lot of times I learned that sometimes the husband, mental illness, denial is a big piece in having a child with special needs. Denial and shame. And we have to get out of that.
We got to
The
get out
Bible
of that.
says that we are healed by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Yeah.
That means whatever we're going through is there for someone else, so we can bring them and
Absolutely.
heal them from our experiences.
Yeah.
So we just have to get away from the shame and the stigmas that we have with our children, the stigmas that we have experienced abuse, just the stigmas. We have to get rid of them so we can heal our people
Absolutely.
and heal our children, heal our ladies, heal our teens. Georgia has been #1 in domestic violence for so many years,
Wow.
for teen domestic violence for so many years. So all of it goes hand in hand, though, because if you have a mother who is struggling with depression and she has a special needs kids, there's a lot of times there's so much she can do for the child
because she
even
can't do it for herself. Yeah. Absolutely.
So the healing has to begin
Yeah.
in our community.
Absolutely. And again, thank you guys.
Things who are hurting, we need to just be that support, that circle of love that they need for healing.
That we need. Absolutely.
Yes.
And I got to give a shout out to my super producer, Dante Hutchins, over there on the other side of the camera.
Dante!
With
In the house!
with the YouTube audience. How much did we have in the chat? Because you never even told me about my chat over there.
Oh, I can't even see it.
You don't know those people. I gotta have to go back and answer them on YouTube then after I edit this. But this has been great. Shout out to you. Shout out to Tammy Rule Women in Action, the AFSF.
Yes.
And if there's anything anybody want to shout out before we get out of here, this will be. I'll probably gonna have to do a little editing, but it'll be up probably by the end of this week, and I'll send you a link. And please, ma'am, please, sir, like, share, and subscribe.
Kenny, you rock, girl. I love you so much. I just thank God for the connection. It's God is such an intentional God.
Absolutely.
And for me to be right across the street, God is in right from you, taking care of Mama Diane, and so who suffered a stroke. And so I'm on the team of taking care of the work that you have put towards the autistic community
and
because
the
you
cause.
have really done a lot in Xavier's life, and it was just admirable the things that you did even as a father, and as it was just wonderful to even see and witness. So we want Xavier's legacy to live on, and that's what the Ezekiel Scholarship is all about. Adopt a cause. We want you to adopt the cause so we can have more funding for our children
Absolutely.
to do even more research on autism. So yes, we want to make a difference, and you have made a big difference in the autism community. So thank you for your work, Sam.
Yeah, you're welcome, but I can't take all the credit because I got an incredible team behind me that has helped me, and again, the way he was raised and the people that were in his life. But I would never take credit for doing it all by myself because I couldn't have done it without myself. Not saying I wouldn't have done it, but I couldn't. But to be to where we are, I could not have done it without the support of my team. And of course, Xavier's, his people as well. So it's been a wonderful cause, and The journey's not over. We're gonna continue. Hit finish. We good. We out.
I'm gonna keep it going.
That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Oh,
much. I gotta get a picture. Dante, you gotta get me and her picture. Oh,
Yes, well, I'm sorry I smell like onions. I ate half of my Whopper on my way. Oh my God, I got onion breath.
Can I
I'm
got no
so
onions?
sorry.
We're taking pictures. We ain't smooching. We good.
I've just been talking. I've been talking. You've been getting all that onion and everything from that Whopper,
Trust
baby.
me, it must have transcended because that conversation was awesome for me. I love that.
It's something that I want to. Not that I'm just inviting myself back to your podcast.
You're more than
But,
welcome. You're a friend of you're a friend. You're officially a friend of the show now.
Okay, this is something we're going to touch base. The suicide rate among black females.
That was
and
one
it
of my
goes
first
into.
podcasts when I first started this thing. Was suicide rate among teenagers.
Are
That
you
was
serious? That's God.
I'll send you a link
That's
to it. That was the
God.
first one. Yeah, that was the first one because there was a time when you would say a black person didn't kill himself. That's not that time anymore.
Been there.
And the suicide rate of African American males from the age of 15 to 25 has skyrocketed in the last 10 years.
But do you know there's a statistics on age 5 to 11?
Did
I
not.
didn't know
Did
5-year-olds
not.
would
No.
commit
I
suicide.